What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Guys, I wanted to talk again about Sauce Gardner and where the Indianapolis Colts are going from here and what that move really insinuates for the Indianapolis Colts going forward. But before we do that, I just want to say this episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Again, guys, the Colts are 6.5-point favorites against Atlanta in Berlin. Over under right now is at 48.5. I think that's a pretty good number. I would probably say that's pretty dang close. Me personally, I think it'll be a little less. I think that usually that's how it works when it comes to these foreign games, that the travel and everything else can be difficult. But be sure to check out FanDuel and take advantage of those. Anyway, so guys, obviously the Colts are 7-2, just coming off of a embarrassing loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, where, obviously the Colts committed 6 turnovers. Not a great game from taking care of the football standpoint. And obviously the Colts, after the loss, still tied for first in the NFL with the best record in football. And then obviously with the trade deadline coming up here, the Colts said they were going to go and make a big move and try to improve this team. And the Indianapolis Colts certainly did that. They traded away 2 first-round draft picks and wide receiver Adonai Mitchell to the New York Jets to get cornerback Sauce Gardner. Again, there has been a lot of discourse about this over the last 24 hours. A lot of discourse. Everyone's got an opinion on it, including myself, and going forward with it. Well, I'll try to dissect that a little bit more here and then talk about where it goes from here, right? So again, for anyone that didn't happen to know or is still wondering about some details, so obviously the Colts gave up their 2026 and 2027 first-round draft pick and obviously Adonai Mitchell to the Jets, right? And I sit here and I say again, I know some people will have the opinion that 2 first-rounders and one of the receivers away, that's too much. That's too much for Gardner. They're allowed to have that opinion, even though I think that's wrong. I've even heard some people say, no player outside of quarterback is worth 2 first-rounders. They never are. I highly disagree with that. We saw Jalen Ramsey get sent for pretty much the exact same package to the Rams many years ago, where they ended up winning a Super Bowl with his help as well, right? Not saying he was the biggest reason behind that, but he was one of the reasons behind why the Rams got to be so good, because they brought in a premier defender at a premier position. And that's really what this situation is. I mean, again, do I believe that Sauce Gardner is as good as prime Ramsey? I don't necessarily believe that, no, but you're still talking about, by every metric, besides PFF. PFF is stupid. And the fact that PFF has Sauce Gardner ranked as the 22nd best corner in the National Football League right now, that's ridiculous. On his worst day, he's a top 15 corner on his worst day. So you are getting a perennial top 10 cornerback in this league for basically 2 first-rounders. Why do the Colts need first-rounders, right? We have said this time and time again. The Colts have consistently not hit on first-round picks in all of Ballard's tenure. The best first-round picks that he's ever had, he obviously got Big Q, which obviously was a big home run, clearly. But that was the 6th overall pick. Tyler Warren, as of recently, 13th overall pick, right? And then, of course, Laiatu Latu was the 14th pick in the draft. Jury's still out on that. Some of the best decisions that Ballard has made has been not in the first round. There's been several first-round draft picks that he has not done very good at going after. And especially, too, at the cornerback market, he hasn't done a great job at the cornerback market early in drafts. And on top of it all, I mean, is there going to be a first rounder this year that is going to give you the same kind of return as Sauce Gardner would coming into this team? The answer is no. Again, Sauce Gardner does not have to be elite. Sauce Gardner just has to be a really good corner, which he still very much is. And coming into a new system with a new scheme and a better overall defense that, isn't going to ask him to do too much, is going to make him much better of a player, right? Of course, and when we look at the contract standpoint of things, remember, Sauce Gardner got a 4-year, $120 million extension this offseason. So clearly he has to get paid. But the best part about this, guys, is the contract is extremely pivotal for the Indianapolis Colts. It works perfectly for them. The Indianapolis Colts, they're only paying $625,000 this year for Sauce Gardner. That's virtually nothing. Virtually nothing. And then next year, you're going to be paying Sauce Gardner $9.5 million next year, which, again, even solid corners get paid that kind of money. I mean, you're talking about really, really, really good corners. That's a steal. That's not even close to being anything. That's an insane value for 2026. 2027, you start paying him just over $20 million for the first time in this contract. Now, again, if you're talking about if Sauce Gardner remains a top 10 corner through 2027, again, $20 million is still a bargain. It's still a bargain. I mean, the elite corners of the NFL make $30 million a year now. 25 to 30 million is where you start making elite money, right? And you're not going to have to pay him that. Yes, you're going to pay him a lot in 2027, but again, for the talent that you think you're going to get from him, that 20 million is still a good bargain. It's still a good number. It's only in 2028 and 2029 when you start paying him over $25 million a year, where you start paying him 26, 27 million. That's where the big money starts coming in, which, by the way, at that point in time, if the Indianapolis Colts decide they don't want to pay Sauce Gardner that kind of money moving forward, then okay, fine. You can either trade him, cut him, you can do all these different things to save you some money, and you don't have to pay that kind of money. But the good thing is, after 2027, Charvarius Ward is no longer going to be on this payroll. Cameron Bynum might potentially not be on this payroll. So, you're talking about a guy that's going to start getting paid a lot more money in 3 years. But in those 3 seasons, a lot of guys that are taking up your big cap numbers, they're not going to be there anymore. And Sauce will still only be 28 years old when he is in his 3rd year of his contract here. So, I mean, this isn't, he's going to be 27, 28 years old. Like, he's still going to be in his prime. So that's fine to pay him that kind of money then, when some other guys are going to be moving out because they're getting older, they're done with their contracts, all this other stuff. So the Colts can do some stuff with that, right? But all of this to say, again, regardless of how you feel about Sauce Gardner as a player and the compensation that was given up, what does this kind of move mean for the Indianapolis Colts going forward? A lot of people insinuating this is a all chips in move. Remember in 2022, or at the end of the 2021 season, when Jim Irsay posted that video outside of the private airplane saying the Colts are going to be all chips in at this moment in time. Well, it took 3 years to finally get to be all chips in, but the Indianapolis Colts are now finally in that position where they are all chips in. That's what it feels like from a Colts perspective. Now, obviously, the contract situation for Sauce Gardner plays insanely well for this because, again, the Colts are going to now be able to, instead of having to pay $25 million plus every year for the next 3 years for Sauce Gardner, as we said, he's virtually non-existent on the cap right now. You just paid a little over $500,000 for one of the best corners in the National Football League. And then next year, again, even at $9.5 million, that's virtually nothing. It's money towards the cap. But remember, the caps continue to increase every year. So those numbers continue to remain pretty darn good. And then, of course, when it comes to just only having to pay $9.5 million for a very, very good corner, potentially elite corner, that's still a great bargain, because that is going to allow you, as the Indianapolis Colts, to re-sign the pieces that you feel you're going to need. We've already talked at length about how the Colts have said they're trying to get an extension done with Daniel Jones at some point. And this move in particular for the Indianapolis Colts, it feels very much like this is the route that they're going to take, that they're all chips in on Daniel Jones, because if they somehow didn't land Daniel Jones, now they can't draft a quarterback high in the draft. They would have to go with Anthony Richardson, which I don't believe that they actually want to do. I do believe that the Colts will get a deal done with Daniel Jones at some point. And I think Daniel Jones is going to want the same thing, but he's obviously going to want some money. But this allows you to still be able to get that extension with Daniel Jones. It allows you to be able to keep guys like Alec Pierce, where, again, paying $9.5 million this next year for him versus having to pay 25 plus, that's another $16 million that you are saving this year to be able to retain guys that you want, like Alec Pierce, like Daniel Jones, like potentially Nick Cross, if you want to, if you can somehow find a way to convince Nick Cross to come back. And then, of course, like we said, there's other moves that will be made. I'm sure some roster reconstructions will happen. And then there could be other moves that the Colts will then be able to make. They'll be able to make some other corrections and make some other bigger moves in this next offseason to basically bring this team into existence, right? And to keep this team at the top of where they are right now. But again, so contractually, this makes a ton of sense, and it works, and it's very friendly for the Indianapolis Colts in these next few years, because this is the type of move you make when you look at yourselves and say, we are here. We are able to compete with anyone if we make a move like this. You have a team that, again, recency bias, you obviously laid an absolute goose egg against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not going to deny that. But the previous 7 weeks prior to that, the Indianapolis Colts were absolutely destroying every team that they were playing up to that point for the most part. Their offense, again, at a historical rate. If you exclude the last game, they were at an historical rate with this new quarterback in Daniel Jones. Obviously, we know what Chris Ballard has done this offseason. He went out, he got that weapon in Tyler Warren for this offense. He obviously brought in Daniel Jones to compete with Anthony Richardson. And then, of course, the defense. We know that he brought in Charvarius Ward. You brought in Cameron Bynum. Ballard has consistently been shuffling through the cornerback room while it's not been healthy. And then, of course, you add another defensive weapon in Sauce Gardner to add to a secondary that is struggling right now because of the fact of the injuries, right? So when you get this secondary healthy and you get a Sauce Gardner, Charvarius Ward, Kenny Moore being back, with those guys in the cornerback room, and then obviously Jalen Jones is coming back. You have Mekhi Blackman as backup. This is going to have an elite secondary written all over it. It will be one of, if not the best secondary in the National Football League when it becomes healthy again. And really all we're just waiting for is Charvarius Ward. But this is what you're at now. It's not just this year. It's next year too. Because if you're going to bring in Daniel Jones for a couple more years to continue to do what he's doing with this offense, and you have guys like Jonathan Taylor under contract, Michael Pittman under contract, you're going to get AP back on contract. Josh Downs is still on his rookie deal. Offensive linemen are still on their deals. Defensive linemen, they're not getting any younger. They're on their last leg here for what you want from DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. And then these secondary guys, you got all these guys under contract right now for the next few years. take advantage of what you have in front of you. You are 7-2. Yes, you laid a goose egg against the Steelers, but every single other game, you have shown people that you are capable of hanging around with every other team. And then you're going into this gauntlet this year. And then next year, you're going to have most people that you have right now under contract that you really need to make a push, because the Colts feel they have a chance to go deep into the playoffs and potentially contend for a Super Bowl based on how they're playing right now. And making a move like this for Sauce Gardner, where you bring in another high-level corner to add to that secondary, is just another thing to make Lou Anarumo's defense that much more elite. I love what the Colts are doing, and I do believe that this is feeling of we're putting all of our chips in on this. We feel very confident with the coaching staff we have right now and the players that we have right now, that if we kept this team intact for the next few years, that this is a team that can not only make it into the playoffs, but can contend deep into the playoffs and have a chance at a Super Bowl run for the first time since 2009. So I like this. I think that this means the Colts are putting everything they can into it. Let me know what you guys think. Shout out to FanDuel for sponsoring. Thank you so much. And as always, go Colts.